We're going to move on now to a presentation from Rich Keane from DAFF on some work they're doing on monitoring and some really interesting tech on the monitoring of and diagnostics of Varroa mite and for bees and beehives, which is a slightly different perspective, but still really, really important. So Richard's got over 20 years of leadership experience in the public sector and in international and national development. He commenced his current principal director role with DAFF in 2020, and he's leading teams around Australia on biosecurity innovation, research and education programs. So that's really follows on a bit of a trend in terms of comms and education we've been talking about already. Currently, he's also the co-design lead for the Catalysing Australia's Biosecurity Initiative, working with stakeholders across the biosecurity continuum on our innovation and transformation needs in the biosecurity space. So, Rich, I'll hand over to you and allow you to progress with your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Is someone able to put, oh, there we go. Perfect, beat me to it with the PowerPoint. All right. Thank you very much for that introduction, and noting the time, I'm going to try and go through this reasonably quickly and leave time at the end for questions, but that was a really good presentation before. Look, just following on from that point around Catalysing Australia's Biosecurity Initiative, it's a co-design approach with DAFF, SAR and a number of other partners across I'll call it the biosecurity ecosystem. We recently launched it at the ABARES Outlook conference, but it's a key element of bringing the partners together early in the piece to try and work on a lot of the wicked problems that we have in biosecurity. And there's a lot there in terms of the threats that we face pre-border, but the one that we're going to be talking about today is unfortunately the Varroa mite in Australia. And while that is unfortunate in the eradication program and treatment that we're going through, it's presented some unique opportunities. Before I do though, this is just a little bit about one of the sections that I've got there in my branch. Very lucky to have some really good operators there who are happy to work in that sort of nebulous space that can be innovation and research. So we've got risk research. We have partnerships, for example. People would know Uni of Melbourne. They've got the current grant for biosecurity research that we administer. It's called SEBRA. We also have, it was the innovation program, but that's currently been paused while we are reviewing the effectiveness of that 5-year program. And almost the BIP 2.0 is Catalysing Australia's Biosecurity Initiative, which I just talked about, and I'll talk a bit more as we go through. But again, opportunities to bring partners together, try and identify problems, and understand how they align with our strategic priorities. And on the federal side, you would have heard the National Biosecurity Strategy, the 6 core priorities, but there are a number of other sectorial and jurisdictional based ones that we also have. And then the innovation pilots, so Jess May and Mel Hindle are a couple of the people that we have in the team. There's a number of others, but help us look at some of these problems that are right here, right now. How can we address and work through with our partners to try and test new technology to make sure or see whether it's fit for purpose. So next slide. There we go. I've already set the scene in terms of the Varroa mite. Everyone would be aware of, obviously, the importance of it. And until recently, we remained free of Varroa mite thanks to our stringent security measures. But as everyone is aware, in June 2022, the mite was detected at the Port of Newcastle, and it's continued to spread around New South Wales despite the measures that have been taken. From June 2022, industry and government have worked closely in partnership in an attempt to eradicate the Varroa mite. With a recent increase in detections over the greater area, it's now made eradication a real challenge, and so we're looking into that sort of management phase, that dual phase as well. And this is more from the East Coast. Appreciate on the West, it's something that hasn't arrived there yet. We hope it doesn't, but what we're talking through today with these pilots might present some unique opportunities for people to consider. Next slide. And, you know, why DAFF? Why did we do this? Did we need to? Well, we're involved in the original work around the eradication of Varroa mite, working with the partners and agencies. And during that initial time, we were looking at, it's called Purple Hive. You can see there it is a purple hive, but it's a really neat piece of AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning technology. I will say, though, very costly in terms of the initial Purple Hive sort of set up and tests. But what it was, could we do things differently? For example, we currently use sugar shakes. We use alcohol washes to test and check for Varroa mite. Are there other ways using new technology that's available, regardless of where you are, whether you're in metropolitan or remote and rural areas? When the National Management Group decided to move from an eradication program to more of that management control approach, we worked with, it's Fermanatech is the provider, basically to pilot the trial. And it was really something that it did work, was reasonably expensive, and we looked at different alternatives to how we could perhaps revise that down. And if anyone does know that AI and ML, basically it was using like optical character recognition and very sort of high level sensors to try and detect the Varroa mite on the bees as they're going in and out of the hive and around it, which, as you can imagine, is probably not something that, if you're ramping that up out, is very expensive. But we did have this pitch and explored a number of different options under that original Purple Hive banner. It came in through the Catalysing Australia's Biosecurity Initiative. We have a number of working groups that are targeted in, it can be in diagnostics, it can be in general surveillance, One Health, for example, that can be used to either start up or address and work with partners very early in the piece. So this is where Purple Hive came through. And what we decided, if we can just go on to the next slide, using the BeeRight, but in a revised format, and doing it in two distinct, I guess, phases, and one in the ACT as well as in New South Wales. And, we've talked a bit about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but what is it? What can it do? So basically, you can see in the top right there on the photo, basically the little sensor there just sits on the top there. Hopefully that's clear enough. I probably should have sent it through in advance. And basically detects a whole lot of things that determine the health of the hive. And I will say that we looked at a number of tests, not just here in Australia. There's previous tests that have been done in New Zealand, which does have Varroa mite. Basically picks up on sound patterns, amongst other things, to determine hive health, whether it has Varroa mite or perhaps there might not be, there might be other issues there around the queen and the workers. So it can pick up distinct patterns. Basically, it's like an Internet of Things, so that information can be sent back through to we go through Telstra, but you can go through any provider if you really wanted to be able to get an indication of what particular health state the hive is at. So you can put these in each of your hives and have it all marked and referenced back. So hive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it can present real-time information. And with this, if it proves successful, which we think it will, you can consider a whole range of different things. You don't need to manually go out there all the time, or you might want to dedicate certain time to certain hives that may not be as healthy compared to others. And it's providing, probably for the first time, that evidence-based, data-driven type of approach. And it's something really that through the CAB that we're really keen on. And I can say evidence-based, data-driven, but it's got to be cost-effective as well. It can't be something that you go, yeah, we need this, but you're going to pay an arm and a leg to do it, and it's going to take a long time to show that effect. But really, that's what it is. And as I said, we have done previous tests in New Zealand. They were successful, did detect Varroa mite. We did do it with environmental DNA, which I'll come up to in a minute. But it's a really practical and neat way of being able to try and use real-time data and information instead of, again, sugar shakes or alcohol washes. Down the bottom right there, you should be able to see the little slide, but that's basically how the data can be presented to beekeepers and to get an actionable sort of view of what your hive or hive's health is like. and can give you other things around general hive activity, colony strength, and queen presence, and things like that. So really, really good piece of tech. Next slide, please. There we go. Beat me to it. There's the dashboard. It can give you that view of hive health. I think this one shows over 1,800 hives, so it's condensed and taken all that information, but you can pull it apart, tweak it, use it however you like. Again, it's a prototype or a beta version. There'll be amendments and adjustments that can be made as part of this pilot. It'll be working with our commercial and other beekeepers, backyard beekeepers and hobbyists, to see if this is something that works for them. So apologies, I will send this afterwards in case anyone is interested to have a bit of a look. It's a bit hard on the screen there, isn't it? Next slide. So who else is involved? This is a CAB initiative. You hear me say CAB, but it is something that is, it's already been stood up. It's co-funded. We have at the moment 5 or 6 working groups, but things can be stood up if there's general interest. For example, if there was interest in Varroa in general under the National Management Group response, or I don't know, over on the WA side, doesn't have to be about bees. It could be the polyphagous shot-hole wood borer or something else that might be, more current in terms of what you're dealing with. But you can leverage off the CAB for bringing partners, bringing in the expertise, bringing in research and development corporations, Horde Innovation, a number of others are involved in this. So by doing that, you're getting people involved early in the piece, understanding what the business problem is, and trying to work together in that collective forum to trial things. And while I'm presenting today on a piece of tech on BeeRight and also the eDNA, there is a whole range of other things as well that we probably all get in our working environment and day, and trying to channel and put those good ideas through, and then be able to filter them and align them to our strategic priorities and also their effectiveness and whether they're ready. The goal of this, while it's gone very well in terms of the pilot so far, there will be other steps and phases that we'll need to go through. But if we don't bring everyone together, what's the point when it comes time to, if we're considering implementation? If everyone hasn't been through that journey, they're going to say, go away. So really, that's what it is, addressing some of those wicked problems in the biosecurity ecosystem, looking at innovative technology, digital systems, and hopefully transforming performance. Ideally, we would not like these sort of pests and disease in Australia, but if they do come through, we also need to be flexible and agile enough to be able to pivot and work together. And so in this one, it's a collaboration with ACT Government, Queensland, New South Wales, Uni of Canberra, who help us on the eDNA side, as well as a whole lot of other people that I probably should have had up there to mention, including Vermanatech. So that's basically what the pilot is. If we just go to the next slide, I'll run through a bit more detail, because I'm sure people will probably say, okay, you talked a bit about it. What is it? What are the phases and things that we're doing? So short, sharp tests. Ideally, it might not work. Fail fast. It'll mean that either the government or governments haven't spent a lot of money investing in technology that is either not ready or not able to get there. But the idea is that it can be tailored for your commercial beekeepers, but also your hobbyists. So your citizen science type of approach, if you wanted to take that, use your cost effective channels to be able to get this information and be able to make informed decisions. Now, obviously, it's got to be validated and verified, which is some of the next phases. But if we don't go out and do these tests and get people on board, then there'll be no point. We are going out, or we have been out to areas in Australia where there is Varroa. As I said previously, we have tested in New Zealand, but we have been out to Kempsey, for example. But we're also validating those data sets and information so that your AI and your ML models get tightened up and it makes it a bit more effective, but also you're validating and happy with the results that you're getting with your environmental DNA, which I'll talk about in a second. Next slide. There we go, a bit about eDNA. I'm sure everyone already knows a lot about it. We used this sort of technology during that thing called COVID. We were doing COVID tests and swabs and things like that. similar technology, but it can be tailored according to however you like. The labs there, we've got a agreement through the Uni of Canberra, but they have about 10 or 11 labs based around Australia, all NADA accredited, that can be used. So you can do your swabs, using my mouth, you can use swabs around the hive, for example. You could use vacuum cleaners. You could use a whole range of different ways to collect particles and samples and be able to test it. And the whole idea is that we want to see whether there is organisms, and while I say eDNA, it's also eRNA, and eRNA is probably of more concern because that probably means it's items that have been recently shedded and that organism may be alive or may have been alive more recently, but picks up that sort of genetic material. Doesn't matter whether you're doing, we've done samples recently in ACT here in water, but you can do soil. You can swab, as I said, around the mouth of your hive or even on the top there. And that sort of genetic material can either be processed in bulk through your labs and partnerships that we've got them even over there in WA, or through standalone portable machines as well. So that is a bit about eDNA, and I think if you've got further questions, get in touch with us afterwards, but I might just go through noting the time, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for talking for too long. Here's a bit more about the pilot. So April Fools, we started 1st of April. We started in ACT and New South Wales, running them currently, and I think they're going through till early September. As I mentioned before, we're doing a bit of a citizen science approach. So in ACT, we don't have any commercial beekeepers, in case anyone wants to know. So it's a lot of hobbyists, a lot of people that were interested. We wrote out through an expression of interest and had a mammoth response. It was fantastic. In fact, probably more than what we could cater for. So we had to then go through and shortlist some local beekeepers there that we could use as part of this pilot. And then in terms of where we were going to go in New South Wales, we did pick Kempsey, as I said, that's as part of that emergency management zone. So I had to do a lot of work there. And also a series of, while we're also talking about the Vimana tech or the BeeRight, eDNA tests and confirming how they would go. So we ran it in parallel, and the idea was to test it against existing practices, a la sugar shakes, a la alcohol washes and things like that. And the whole idea is that we work through and see whether we're happy with it. Here we go, a bit of an update. So we have done a number of early phases. And I say we, they're all we, but Mel and Jess and Uday and the team have been out there working there to take the samples. We did have some initial issues with putting the BeeRight technology in there. It didn't like the Canberra winter. You can see I'm already rugged up as well while I'm doing this, but had some issues, and we've been able to resolve that and got some new kits out there. But we've also done some of the initial eDNA swabs as well and run that back through. And because it's here in ACT, we went through Uni of Canberra. On the other side, the sheer scale of it, you can see there with New South Wales. So a lot of samples that were sent out. And, a lot of this has already been funded for a very, very low amount, I will say, or payment in kind. And that's through DAFF, SIRA, and all of the other partners that I did mention before. Next slide. So what did we find there? It was, Site 1 found that of the 150 commercial hives that we tested, 83% of them were infected with Varroa mite. And that was also compared against the results from alcohol washes and things like that. So I guess we knew that was going to be the case, but it's a matter of affirming and making sure that it's fit for purpose. But the BeeRight technology and the data collected within the first 48 hours was really exciting. It showed that we weren't able to just detect Varroa, but also showed that there's, that opportunity, I guess, for remote infestation level monitoring and things like that. It was really, really good. Well, we found it. I shouldn't say it's that positive, but in terms of the time frame, it's really good, and we didn't expect it to work within such a short period of time. So that was good. I guess if it can be detected, there is that opportunity. You did see the dashboards and things like that. You can get those alerts sort of pinging through, so you don't have to always be out checking and validating and doing your alcohol washes or the other ways, which do, I should say, kill a lot of bees anyway. So this reduces the need to actually do that. And what options you may want to take. We're up to site visit 2. No, just stay on site visit 2, sorry. So that was where I mentioned we just had some issues with the gateway device, but similar sort of volumes of products going out in terms of samples and kits. Next slide, thank you. So we have jumped through a fair bit, and in ACT it's gone really well. We've gone back out and recommenced installing the kits. ACT, we're continuing to send them out. So we're doing samples over that period that I mentioned, starting in April through to September, so that we're not just getting 1 month when there might be a lot of activity. We're also going through some of those colder months, which in ACT is right now, but through to September as we start to head into the spring, so that we get that sort of possible variance in hive activity and other things that the data can be correlated. And I will say, as part of this, in terms of data protection and information, it's at the behest, and all of the people that were participating in it have that level of data privacy, data governance sort of protection mechanisms too. If they don't want to share it, they don't have to. It can be redacted. We can keep it in that sort of format so that things aren't known. But there's a lot of flexibility in how the data is obtained and how it's used. So, I'm sure from a commercial aspect, there might be some that people don't want to share, and for good reason, but they can still have that information to process themselves. So probably something I should have mentioned before. Just moving on to the next slide. At the conclusion, so this is what we're going to have. We'll have all of those series or samples coming through from the BeeRight technology, from the eDNA. Also, we will have validated and worked through the traditional approaches, eDNA tested and results, so it'll help us validate and verify. And again, all of this sort of stuff has been done in New Zealand, so it's good. It's a good working comparison. People say the Varroa mite behaves differently in Australia. It may do, but the technology and applications still work and detect it. And then we've got expert advice through Cyro and others to help us prepare a final report for consideration, which will be made available to all and sundry if you're interested. After the pot, there we go, beating me to it. It's not the end as part of this sort of pilot. It's an opportunity for the CAB to help if people want, or, as a result of this, you might say over in, for example, in WA, we want to consider and leverage off this and use it in, Port of Esperance or around Fremantle, or I don't know, there might be other options that you may want to consider. And while we're talking about Varroa, it doesn't have to be that particular item. It can be used in other cases as well. The assays can be developed, and I probably should have mentioned that with the eDNA, according to whatever business problem you're looking at, and validated through those NADA accredited standards with the lab. But whole idea is there'll be further opportunities. Obviously, we'll need to get the green light if we want to move away, and we have worked with the honeybee industry and council as well if they are considering moving against reducing alcohol washes, sugar shakes, and looking at the new technology. They want to be validated that they are up to the gold standard that is currently applied, and with it comes some benefits, as I said, less bees being killed, early warning detection and surveillance, data-driven sort of approach that can help inform and provide advice for people out there. So I think I did all right for time. Justin's probably going to tell me no, but any questions? There you go. You've got our innovation pilots. We're always open to any ideas. Have you considered, this? Let us know. Or if we could do it a different way, also all ears. We can't do this without partnerships, and it's all about that key bit of stronger partnerships to help keep the biosecurity system nice and strong. So hopefully that's sort of showing a little bit around how we're trying to make a difference in the Varroa pilot. And I might just stop there and hand back to Justin.
Yeah, look, thanks, Rich. That's fantastic. And really exciting and interesting piece of work, particularly with the timeliness by which you can get results in that sort of area, which is such a key part of all biosecurity surveillance and response capabilities is timeliness. So that's fantastic.